Okay, what we're going to look at today is lesson 7-8, which is out of chapter 7, and it's the section 8 in that chapter, and it's making circle graphs. And this is fairly complicated, so hopefully this will help out. Okay, here is a common scenario that you get when you have to make a circle graph. You have the data. This is favorite subjects, percent of students. Okay, this is the easiest type to make a circle graph from, if you already have your percentages. So what we do is, in this case here, we take math, which is 12%, and we change that to a decimal. Okay, so that's going to be 0.12 as a decimal. And we're going to multiply that by 360, because there's 360 degrees in a circle. So we're making a circle graph, so we got to use all 360 degrees. So when you type that into a calculator, 0.12 times 360, okay, that comes out to 43.2, which we're going to round to 43 degrees. And I'm going to write that with a marker here so I can see that later on. So this is 43 degrees right here. Okay, I do the same thing for language arts. Okay, I multiply 0.25 times 360, okay, and that comes out to 90 degrees, all right, so that one's going to be 90. I do 0.30 times 360, and that one comes out to 108 degrees, and I do 0.33 times 360, and that one comes out to 108 or 118.8. We're going to round that to 119 degrees. Okay, so I'll write those down so that I don't have to look back when I'm making my circle graph. Now, the other thing that you want to do is make sure that these add up to roughly 360. You might get 359 or 361. That's okay. Go ahead and make your circle graph if you're within a degree of 360. Because of the rounding, you could be a little bit under 360, or maybe 1 over 360. But if you add these up and you're not there, something's wrong. You don't want to do the whole circle graph and find out that you only really had 340 degrees because you calculated one of them wrong. So it's just a check to make sure before you go ahead and construct a circle graph. But this does add up to 360. I already checked it. So now we're going to go to the circle graph. And we got to remember, I might have to go back to these when I label it. Okay, so I'm going to go to a circle here, and now I have to take my protractor. Okay, when you're making your sectors of the circle, you have to have a starting point. So what I'm going to do is I mark the center of the circle roughly. I'm going to go from the center outward. Okay, now that's going to be a starting point to make my first degree here. Okay, I'll do math first. It's 43 degrees. Okay, so I set my protractor on here like this. Now, here is the center. There's all protractors will have a little hole here, or they'll have a spot to where you start. And I encourage students to follow this line out. You start with 0 here. There's a 0 and there's a 180. Well, the 180 is actually for measuring, angles going the opposite way. You follow it out, you have to start with 0. Okay, 10, 20, 30, here's 40. Okay, we need 43, so I'm going to put a little mark right there. Okay, now if I draw a line from here through that mark, okay, that is roughly 43 degrees. I can label that sector math. Okay, now 90 degrees. So I can go off of this now the same way. I just keep working my way around. Okay, I'm making it off of this line. So I follow it out. Here's 0. Okay, I got to go all the way to 90. 90 is right here, so I make my mark. Okay, and I connect from here to here. Okay, now I'm going to label that one. Language arts was the one that came out to 90. Okay, so that one would be language arts. All right, then we have 108 degrees and 119 degrees. Okay, I'll do the 108 degrees next. Now, here's where it gets a little challenging, because you know, I gotta turn my protractor. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it like this. Now a student can turn their paper. Okay, so they don't have to necessarily turn the protractor upside down. It's a little tricky to set it up this way. Okay, so once again, here's how I would set my protractor. Because I'm going off of this line, I follow it out. I need 108 degrees, which is the inside set of numbers. Here's 0, that's where I start. Go all the way around to 108, okay, which is going to be, here's 110, here's 100. 108 is going to be in that neighborhood right there. Okay, so I connect my line out here, and that one was science. Okay, so I'll label that science. Okay, in my last one, okay, should be, in this case it was gym. And that should be 119 degrees if you did it correctly. Now, once again, this is kind of a tricky one to measure, but I'm going to go off of here. Here's 0. I go all the way around. I'm at about 115 with it because my lines are fairly wide. They take up a couple degrees on this protractor. You know, and what I tell students, if you're within a couple degrees, you know, that's usually accurate enough. The idea behind a circle graph is so the data kind of jumps out a little bit. If you're doing a presentation, you know, this is something that students might want to show in their presentation. Instead of showing numbers, the numbers might not mean a whole lot to the audience, where, you know, in a circle graph, seeing the piece of the sector might mean a little more. Okay, so science and gym, you can see were, in this case here, favored by many. And this data was just taken out of the textbook. So anyway, that's how you do a circle graph with percentages. Okay, let's look at a little more difficult one now. Okay, here is one, layers of the earth. Okay, here are the layers. Okay, here are the depths. Now what makes this one a little more difficult, and let me erase this so we don't get mixed up with any of this information, is the fact that what we got going on here is we don't have percentages. Okay, so what you have to do is you got to get the total here. You got to add these up. Okay, and the total comes out to 746.5. Okay, so now with the calculator, we go 11.5 divided by, okay, so like this here, 11.5 divided by 746.5. Okay, and you're going to get the decimal equivalent to what that is. Okay, so you type it in, 11.5 divided by 746.5, then that has to be multiplied by 360. Okay, so once you get that decimal on your screen or on your calculator, then times it by 360, because there's 360 degrees in the circle. And that's how many degrees you'll be working with. Okay, in this case right here, this one comes out to 6 degrees. Okay, so when we make our circle graph, the troposphere, we have to do a 6-degree sector of the circle graph. You know, we can label it that. Then we go ahead and we do stratosphere the same way. So this one would be 50 divided by 746.5 and then multiply by 360, and that comes out to 24 degrees. Okay, this one, 85 divided by 746.5 times 360 comes out to 41 degrees. Okay, and then the thermosphere, obviously the largest of the 600 feet of depth here down. Okay, so 600 divided by 746.5, that comes out to 289 degrees. Okay, once again, we can check our work by adding our degrees up. That should come out to 360 or thereabout. You want to check that before you go and start doing making the circle graph, because that will save you a lot of work. You know, make sure it comes out right first, and then you go ahead, you make your 6 degree, label it, make your 24 degree, label it, 41 degrees, okay, label it, 289 should be what's left. You'd want to probably do this, save this one for last. You know, making a sector that's 289 degrees requires a little bit of thought. You know, a straight line, half of the circle's 180 degrees. You know, so you can make a real light line across your paper, and then add on to it from there, you know, for something that's over 180. But what I would do is I would do these sectors first, and then check and see if you got 189 degrees left for the thermosphere. But that's it, that's how you do it. It's a little trickier if you don't have them in percentages. You gotta do decimals and then times them by 360 to get your degrees and work off of that. Hopefully this is helpful. There's a lot to this. Not only is there a fair amount of calculating, but there's, you know, it's also tricky to use the protractor correctly. So we got a lot going on with this. Hopefully this lesson helped.